Hello everyone and welcome to a special episode of One Missing, One Murdered, All Indigenous, which is a true crime podcast dedicated to true crime cases involving Indigenous people. And in honor of Missing Murdered Indigenous Women Awareness Day, today's episode will be aimed at just that. I picked out a case that embodies that awareness and deserves the attention that we're about to give to it today by telling the story of Rosenda Sophia Strong. Also, I want to add that today's episode will be ad-free and commercial-free because we have a lot to cover, and I would love to dedicate as much time as I have to telling this story for everyone to hear. So without further ado, today's episode is very special because not only do we get to talk about the case, we also get to visit with Rosenda's sister today and hear from her sister's tragic story from her point of view. But before we do that, I want to talk about the unsolved homicide of Rosenda Sophia Strong. Now, Rosenda Strong was a 31-year-old Indigenous mother of four, a sister, and much, much more. Rosenda was also an enrolled member of the Confederated Tribes of Umatilla, and she was also a descendant of the Yakima Nation. On October 2nd of 2018 in Wapato, Washington, Rosenda was planning a night out with friends by heading to the local casino, or Legends Casino, in Topanish, Washington. But before she would head out, she actually stopped by to visit her sister, Sissy Strong Reyes, at her home. And that seems to be the last time that Rosenda's family would hear from her ever again. After not hearing from Rosenda, her family became concerned and began to look for her. In an interview conducted by CNN, Rosenda's sister, Sissy Strong Reyes, recalled that when she went to the tribal police to file a missing persons report, she said that, quote, "When I told the cops, they said, well, she's just probably partying, getting, doing drugs," end quote. So with little to no help from law enforcement, Rosenda's family searched and looked for Rosenda. But doesn't that seem to be the recurring thing that we're hearing all the time when it comes to reporting our Indigenous people missing? We feel dismissed. We feel like we're being not heard or that because of the things that we've done. It's clear that law enforcement doesn't see us as a priority, which is something that we as Indigenous people are fighting to have that change, to have that viewpoint changed. It's also really big within the Indigenous tribal police force as well, which is something that we're fighting to try to change. And a lot of these searches are performed by ourselves with help from the community members and outside community members when we're very fortunate. When a person goes missing, there's usually a period after they've gone missing that's extremely important. It's very critical. So to not have law enforcement move or take any action and just write them off, I feel devastates any chance of finding them alive, or if at all. And those of my true crime listeners know that rule, that the first 48 to 72 hours are crucial and critical. So to be dismissed this way, as often as we are, needs to change. Now, on July 4th of 2019, Yakima Nation Tribal Police and the FBI were called to the 64,000 block of U.S. Highway 97 around 4:20 p.m. after two homeless men found human remains in an unplugged freezer. Sheriff spokesman Casey Shilperut had said. Now, following the discovery of those remains, the Yakima County Coroner's Office were able to positively identify the remains of Rosenda. Now, they were able to identify the remains by using Rosenda's dental records. Following that, Rosenda's family received the worst news that they could ever have hoped. In a newspaper article published by the Yakima Herald Republic, Rosenda's sister Sissy was quoted by saying, quote, "My baby sister Rosenda Strong's remains were found in a freezer. Yes, it's been confirmed to me this morning from the FBI agent working on my sister's case." Reyes said in a Facebook post, quote, "We have her back and not in the way that we wanted, but after 275 days of looking, wondering, our baby sister, mother, aunt, cousin, friend is coming home to our mother," end quote. So to be told that your missing sister had been missing this entire time and looking for so long, Rosenda's family never gave up hope. And though they never gave up hope, in some way it was rewarded, but not in the reward that you would have wanted. Like Sissy said, that they had her back, but just not the way that they wanted. But that there was some closure given to the family, which I think is something that every family wants, is closure. And I'm very happy and glad that they were able to get closure, but at the same time very sad and heartbroken as to the state of the closure that they did receive. Now, Rosenda's case is classified as an open homicide investigation. And there's been little update on the status of her case, but as we've talked about a lot on the show, we talk about how little information is put out, but it has everything to do with trying to protect the integrity of the case. And those that know that if you give out too much, it can really jeopardize a case. So I understand the privacy of keeping it as low key as possible. But it still leaves us with a lot of questions as to how Rosenda ended up in that fridge and how she was able to go missing while surrounded by friends. I read in an article that said that she was last seen leaving the casino, but I haven't heard anything since then as to the last people that she interacted with. Now, Rosenda's family has actually made a good effort to make sure that people don't forget Rosenda or her case, and that they've never given up trying to find justice for Rosenda. They actually just celebrated Rosenda's birthday on April 16th of 2021, which is this year. But to keep up to date on everything, you can always join the Facebook, help us find Rosenda. I know that that's kind of an older Facebook, but Rosenda's sister seems to be very active at keeping everybody up to date. So with that being said, everybody, let's try to find justice for Rosenda. Now, like I said at the top of the episode, this is a special ad-free episode, more of a bonus episode, if you will. But I want to say thank you to Rosenda's sister, Sissy Strong Reyes, for coming onto the show. I'd gotten a blessed opportunity to have a sit-down talk with Sissy as she talked a lot about who Rosenda was and giving a first-hand perspective of what those days were like before leading up to Rosenda's disappearance, all the way until where the case stands today. So with that being said, let's jump right into the interview. One of the things that really falls to the wayside when it comes to, news articles, police reports, and everything like that, they leave out a lot of details. Of course, for good reason, not to jeopardize an open case and stuff like that. But there's a lot of things leading up to that, that maybe you might have saw, and it really brings home who Rosenda was, because I've talked about it a lot, that these cases are very hard to. They're kind of they get lost in the cracks because they're so many, and I don't think that there's a lot of talk about, remembering who they are.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. It's always what happened to them and never who they were, what they were doing in a time of what happened to them.
Absolutely. It's really easy to look at a missing persons poster and just be like, oh, that's sad.
Yeah.
And forget to, that in Rosenda's case, she had, family, loved ones, kids, and to not know that, and it's really hard, and it's easy to forget. So
yes, and that's why I keep doing what I do, because I know it will eventually be forgotten, especially by like law enforcement or the tribal members, tribal leaders. So it is important to talk about them.
well, my mom used to say a long time ago that when you stop talking about someone, they tend to kind of fade out. But the second that you start talking about them, even if they're just, if you haven't thought about them for, days, weeks, months, years, they tend to come back. So I think that telling
Yes.
Rosenda's story kind of keeps her, in the limelight.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Well, I wanted to kind of start off by talking about letting you kind of tell us, who Rosenda really was. Did you guys grow up together? What was your childhood like?
We grew up together. My mom was a single Indigenous mother, so we grew up in a family home. My mom's, I think that's why me and my sister were so close, because I watched my mom and her sister be close. We all lived in the same big house, and my sister, I grew up with, when we found out my mom was pregnant with her, we were shocked because my mom didn't know.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, and she was actually, I think, hitting almost 44 years old.
Oh,
So,
wow.
yeah. So, yeah, it was a big shock. So, when she came into the world, it was, I do remember holding Rosenda and helping. And Rosenda, as she got older, she was very, very outspoken. She was bubbly, very energetic. She could just walk into a room and just have the family, friends, laughing and smiling. And she always made sure everyone around her, even growing up, that everyone around her was smiling and happy. Even, if she wasn't having such a good day, she would even tell me like, smile, Nana. And it was she never addressed us by name, not even in public. It was always because we do have an older brother, Chris.
Oh.
We all grew up together. So it was Yaya for my brother, and then for me, it was always Nana. So growing up with her, she was just she was a handful, It's like every kid and every sibling was,
Right.
following us, being a tattletale, just being a kid. She really loved being in. We had a ditch bank and had tadpoles and frogs and stuff like that. So if we couldn't find her, that's where she would be. And if she could bring it home with her in a jar, whatever it was, she was bringing it home because it was now like they needed a home. So she was a character. She really loved animals. Any stray dog, cat, she'd bring it home. If she knew, like, nobody, I asked people, I asked our neighbors, they said no, it's not my. So I had to bring the cat or the dog home, and my mom would give in. So she was a good she was a good little sister. She was always there, always with my mom. That was like my mom's little, that was her princess, her little baby. And because my mom didn't know she was pregnant, so she got a lot of attention. And it was, I'm glad I was part of that, of her growing up and seeing her grow up into a little girl, into a teenager, a sassy one too. And she was just very talkative. She had friends on every block in our neighborhood. So it wasn't just one friend's house that we would have to go look for her, when it gets late. So me and my brother would be like, all right, you take that end, I'll take this end.
Right.
Because she had friends in both directions. So she was very, very fun to be around. She made everyone laugh. And then, she got into, I would say, like, little neighborhood fights and stuff, but it was like she would always find a way to be like, I'm gonna go tell them sorry. Like a little argument, like kids, and the next day it would always be like, they're friends again. Like Rosenda she didn't like friends or family to be upset at her or mad at her. She would always make it a point to make you laugh or make you not be mad at her no more. So that was very, very loving of Rosenda to be the way she was when she was younger, and just, being a kid. And then also she became a teen mom.
Hmm.
So she had to grow up fairly quick. And also, me being her older sister, I had my son at the age of 14. And then Rosenda gave birth to her first daughter, Carmen, who is actually 20 now. Gave birth to her when she turned just 14, I believe.
Wow.
And yeah, so it was hard for us to grow up, but it was also learning from it, getting older, because we always took care of each other. We were always protecting one another, coming from, being, our family had an alcohol problem. We always made sure we were safe, even in our own home. So, becoming young parents, we really had to grow up fast. And it was hard, especially when our mom passed away in 2005. Rosenda just kind of spiraled and was on a very, very emotional roller coaster at the time. But it still didn't stop her from being her, from funny, being energetic and loving, a good mom, a good sister,
Hmm.
and always keeping up with the family, even in her struggling days. Like, she was always there, always made it to family functions. And that was just her, even if, like, she found out about it, she'd be like, I'm going. It was just sad to know that she's having 4 kids now and she's not here.
Hmm.
So I try to keep the best memories alive of Rosenda, especially to her kids. and her oldest.
I agree. It's one of the things that that we're taught in, at least in something that I was taught as a kid is to, keep these good memories and keep them going that way. So yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, so I always try to like just share funny moments of Rosenda or like remembrance, like, hey, do you remember when Rosenda did this and she made everybody laugh or things like that, memories. And my niece Carmen really enjoys those, and I can see it in her eyes, like, oh, I didn't know that, or that's cool that you remember stuff about my mom. And thank you for sharing those with me, because I didn't know, my mom did all these little things growing up where she loved animals that much. So I try to talk about it as much as I can, which is the good memories, just so our family doesn't forget who she was.
Well, I think that with these cases, like Rosenda's case, a lot of people want to fixate and focus in on remembering and keeping this part of her around. I think that's a really noble way to continue Rosenda's legacy.
Yes, definitely. And that's exactly what I bring when I do events for our sister here on the Yakima Reservation. I just had an event for my sister on April 16th. That was her birthday. And I know an elder had told me, like, you shouldn't be celebrating her birthday. And, I had to tell my elder, like, I get it. And I know that. I go, but my sister wasn't, she was taken. She didn't want to go. It wasn't her time to go. And
Mm-hmm.
I have to keep doing this in my own way. And I feel like for us, it's a healing journey for my family, because we don't want her to be forgotten. I go, and being the fact that, yes, she was murdered. So it's not a celebration. It's more of me honoring her on her day that she was born. And
Right, you're not celebrating her demise. You're celebrating her life in that way.
yes. And I'm glad that, my aunt was like, oh, okay, see, I'm glad I asked and I got an answer.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, yeah, because I believe my sister would do this for me too.
Mm-hmm.
I go, so I don't talk about, when I do these things, I talk about who Rosenda was and how every day she's badly missed by family and friends that reach out all the time to us, that hung out with her every day. It took a toll on them as well.
Right.
I go, so it is hard not to do these type of events. It is hard because they're not here.
With COVID 19 cases declining to low levels across Indian country, it feels like the pandemic is now behind us. However, COVID 19 is still spreading in our communities and new variants are still emerging that could spread more quickly or cause more severe illness. Many states have begun to end mask mandates and other COVID 19 prevention measures, but we recognize that the pandemic is still impacting communities across Indian country. As we move forward, it is important that we continue to protect those that are precious to us by following local guidance and being respectful of those around us. With tribal sovereignty and local differences in COVID spread, some communities may have different rules depending on their needs. So check with your local tribal government or local healthcare provider to learn more about guidance for your community. And do what feels safe and comfortable to protect you and your family in situations where guidance has become more relaxed. I know that, we want to talk about all the positive things about Rosenda. From what I read and everything that I've come across, I mean, it seems like Rosenda was just, going out to go hang out and go gamble a little bit. I mean, it didn't sound like she had really big plans at all. I mean, what can you tell us about that?
She was with her friends all the time. She lost custody of her kids, so she was on the road to, getting recovery to try to get visitation and get her kids back. And around the time she went missing, she was always with her friends on a reservation. Like, I would know where to go. to look for her because and I pretty much knew some of the friends that she hung out with because I either went to school with them or we just know them because we're from here.
Mm-hmm.
So it like the faces weren't like people I didn't know or so she showed up on October 2nd and she was just like, "Hey, Nana, you have any change?" And I happened just to get paid that week and I handed her money. And she's like, "I'm gonna go to the casino. I'm with so and so." And which I walked out. I know what friend she was with. And she left and said, "I'll be back." And, when I couldn't, and the reason why I started looking for my sister that week is because I had a bad feeling something was like, because I couldn't really talk to her either at the time. So I was trying to get a hold of her, but I had woken up that night of having that feeling to a text message that, "Can you please call me?" And it was my sister.
Mm-hmm.
She has siblings on her dad's side. And this is like out of like the ordinary because the only time I talk to her siblings is like when I see them in town or in person. And so to get a message from her, and I'm not her friend on Facebook, so I'm like, okay, this is weird. So I call her, and I call the number she sent me.
Right.
So I'm like, yeah. She's like, "Where's Rosenda?" And I was like, I don't know. I've been looking for her since yesterday. But I mean, she's been active on her Facebook, and she's like, "No, somebody came here to my house, and I told the man if he can go tell you
Mm-hmm.
what he told me, and he was like, 'No, I'm not going back there.' Like I had to run out of the back door of a store. I am going back to Yakima, and I'm never coming back here." And I was like, "Okay, you're scaring me. What do you?" She's like, "This guy told me that our sister's hurt and she's bleeding and she's not
Wow.
okay and that we need to find her. I've been trying to call her Facebook and nothing." And I go, "That's weird." I go, "I just thought she was like sometimes when she's
Mm-hmm.
binging, like like she won't ignore me, but I kind of found that odd of her not accepting my video calls. It's not like her, but I just figured like maybe she's drinking or something. No, you need to find her." And so I started calling everyone that I know would be around my sister, and none of them would answer my calls. None of her friends that I seen her leave with that night would even like if I messaged two of them, "Where's my sister?" I got this disturbing message and I was instantly blocked. So those were the red flags that started making me go full force of looking for my sister. I mean, I even sat out two houses, at 2, 3 in the morning just to see if I can see her. And we still couldn't find her. So my cousin Kevin, he was like, "Hey, where the hell's Rosenda?" And I was like, "I don't know." Like I called everybody I know. I'm like, the last three that were with her, they blocked me from Facebook. I don't know why. And listen, he's like, "Man, sissy, I can't find her either. I've been looking all day." And I'm like, "Don't scare me. Like, where is she?" And he's like, "I went everywhere. I know where Rosenda goes, and I don't know. Everybody's being weird." And I was like,
Hmm.
"Man," I was like, and he's like, "I'm gonna send my brother-in-law to you, okay?" And I was like, "Oh, okay." I thought it was a tribal cop, and I was like, "Okay, well, I'm here at work." And he's like, "All right, I'll send him to the store," which was a convenience store here in Toppenish. And two people walked in, and it was actually the FBI for through the acclimation.
Mm-hmm.
And they were like, "We got some information about your sister being missing and that she's possibly not alive and in the freezer." And I said, "Yeah, that's the same thing I got too." that I need to look for a freezer.
So I don't mean to interrupt you, but how long after Rosenda was last seen did anybody wait to report her missing? I mean, who reported her missing in the first place?
I did. I reported her missing with her daughter. Or September 30th was the last night we saw her. And then I got the messages October 1st. And I filed the report October 2nd.
Oh wow! So I know that in a lot of these cases, in a lot of the news articles, it does say that October 2nd was the last time anybody's seen her, but I'm guessing that that was a misprint.
Yeah.
Okay. And then I know. And how long after that did you receive any sort of messages that said to look for a freezer?
Um, I want to say about in the same week that I started putting on Facebook, where's my sister? Has anybody seen my sister Rosenda? And usually I have done that in the past and I've gotten results like, hey, she's over here, or I seen her here, or literally she would call me like, oh, hey, somebody told me you posted on Facebook that you're looking for me.
So this sounds like something that you've gotten results out of. Like you said, you've gotten results in the past. So why
Yeah.
not give that a try?
Yeah, so and that's what I did actually when I first got the first message on October 1st, like, hey, has anybody heard from my sister? Can you please let me know if she's okay, or tell her to call me? Please tell her to call me. I want to hear her voice. I don't want a message. And I did that and I waited. I tagged her friends. I tagged her. I put it on her Facebook, and I got silence from her friends.
Wow.
And those to me were red flags because my sister told me everything, whether it was good, whether it was bad, whether she knew I was going to tell her, like, you don't be doing that, or it's not funny. So at the time she did go missing, I also got, rumors started coming, like if it was like if I was just getting a text message after text message. I started getting messages from, or like even text messages to my phone number where I don't know the number, or it was a number that was from one of those apps, like, hey, um the reason why it happened to your sister is because someone said that she stole a handgun. And I'm like, so my sister's missing because of a gun? And the cops were like, okay, because when I did the report, I actually didn't get the result I wanted from law enforcement. I got, she's partying, she's just probably out there partying.
Wow.
And I'm like, I'm trying to show you the messages. And he's like, why are they going to send you something like that? Like, he had no compassion, didn't even want to help me. He was standing at the door like, okay, what else do you have to say? I'm trying to go in the building.
When you first reported, the first law agency that you went to, was that tribal or was that something local?
It was the Yakima Nation Police Department.
Yeah, that sounds very familiar.
Yeah.
Seems to be a big problem within the indigenous community that you get turned away in that way. So I mean, as heartbreaking as it is, I mean, it does sound very familiar.
Yeah, and it was too, especially it felt like, even when I go back to that day, it's like I can remember it and I can see the officer's face with no compassion, like I was a bother to him. And it was not what I thought. I thought of them as I can go to them because
Right.
they are here to protect us. And that's not what I got. And it was actually kind of sad that I got treated that way, given the fact that I was standing there with her daughter crying, like she's telling the officer too, like, I couldn't find my mom. I've been up for 3 days looking and I can't find her.
It's really odd that even in this day and age, I mean, this was 4 years ago, that attitude was very prevalent then. It's not something that has ever gone away when it comes to the reporting these cases, and it's really sickening and heartbreaking that law enforcement does kind of treat everybody this way. So
Yeah, and it's like, when I told officers, like, I'm not just anybody. I'm an Indigenous person here asking you for help, and you're supposed to at least help me, right? And it took me pain and tears just to stand there, and like I felt like I had to beg him to look at those text messages for him to say, okay, yeah, that's kind of not normal.
Hmm.
So it wasn't something I wish on any other family, and I hope that in the future, which it's like you said, it's been 4 years and it hasn't changed,
Hmm.
but I hope I hope and pray that that does change in our future, because the missing isn't it the numbers are going up, not down.
Right, right, and I know that everybody up in Washington and across the nation really has picked up this cause. So now, I wanted to know that after that she was reported, I mean, what was the initial plan for law enforcement, for the for her family, for everybody around? What was the next step after that? What was that like?
Honestly, I didn't know at the time, because my cousin just told me, hey, go make a report, and the FBI. So I did. And like talking to them, they were like, oh, I was like, what do I do? They're like, well, we got the report, we're looking for her. Asked me like about her scars, tattoos, and I'm like, trying to give them the best description. I'm like, okay, I'll just send you a picture of her from her Facebook. That way, I mean, people know who she is. Like, people know who I am. So what it was like was, I didn't know. I didn't know. Actually, honestly, I didn't know what was going to happen. I just thought it was going to be, the FBI helping me and, you know, looking for her. And the next day, after I talked to the FBI, is when Roxanne White walked in to my work. And that's when stuff started happening. It wasn't because law enforcement or anybody, it was because Roxanne White left Seattle when she got word, and she made a plan, which when she got here, I remember her from growing up, and I would tell her hello when I would see her. So when she walked in to my work that year, and I seen her asking, like, is Sissy here? And I'm like, walking, I'm like, hey, hello. And she's like, oh my God, like, I'm so glad she's like, I just got here from Seattle. Can I talk to you? And I was like, yeah. She's like, I came to help you.
Hmm.
And I was like, help me do what? With your sister. And I said, oh. I was like, I thought that's what the cops do. She's like, no, they're not going to help you. They're not going to help you put up flyers. And I was like, flyers? She's like, was she missing, right? You can't find her? And I was like, yeah, I can't find her. So she just, my boss was like, go ahead and sit down. I know what you're doing and what you're going through, so that's fine. So I sat down and we started talking, and Roxanne was like, this is what we need to do. We need to print out pictures of her. We need to go to the places where she was last seen. And I was overwhelmed. And just to still talk about it, I can remember that day. I never thought I'd be in this position. So when she told me, like, I'm here to help you, I cried, because I was like, the cops just did this and this. And she's like, and that's all they're going to do for you.
Right.
I hate to tell you that, but just sad to say that that's all they're going to do for you. And I'm like, what? But she's like, well, that's fine that they were here and asking you questions, but we need to get out there, and we need to look for her. And the only way we're going to look for her is if we do it.
Right.
So I said, okay. And she started telling me, like, I'm part of missing and murdered Indigenous women. And I was like, what is that? And then she started like, oh, that's what my sister showed me. One of her friends was missing, and that's what you do. And she's like, she showed me a message. She's like, yeah, because your sister had reached out to me a month ago. that she wanted to get clean and sober.
Oh, wow.
And I go, it's so weird because I go, I don't like saying it, but I go, but my sister had, it was an ugly joke, but, or if my sister knew about it. I go, because when she had showed me, like, hey, this is what Roxanne does.
Mm-hmm.
And it was months before she had went missing. And she goes, I'm going to end up on there, huh? And then I keep messing around. And I'm like, the hell? It's not funny.
Hmm.
And I told Roxanne, I was like, she showed me what you did. I go, and I was like, wow, I was like, I didn't know there was missing people like that, like in, Native people. And she's like, yeah. And I started going through it. And then I told Roxanne, I never thought I would be putting my sister on there. And she's like, yeah, I know. Nobody should be put on there.
Right. I agree.
And I was like, so she stayed, I don't know how many days. I was actually probably like a couple weeks
Mm.
that she stayed when Rosenda first went missing. And it was, at that time, I felt helpless. Like I didn't know what to do. I didn't even know where to start. I didn't even know who to ask. Like, I thought I could just go search for my sister, but I come to find out I need permission. I need tribal's permission. I needed property owner's permission.
Wow. Actually, well, I was going to say that leads me into my next question about what was the search process like, and you saying that you needed tribal permission. I mean, that's kind of something new that I've never even heard.
Yeah. When we wanted to go search and do a prayer walk where my sister was last seen, which was in Wapato on the reservation, and they said, no. Why are you guys trying to do that? You don't even know if she's missing.
Really?
Yeah, and so my cousin Roxanne, she got an appointment with the council, and the tribal leaders didn't care that we were wanting to look for my sister. Like my cousin Roxanne had to cry and pretty much beg the Yakama Nation Council just for us to do a prayer walk. Everything else was a no.
Wow, that's actually the first time I've ever heard of the tribal leaders having an issue with that.
It just said it was a lot of paperwork of, not just for them, but for the owners of the land that were in that area. And that's what it came down to, was paperwork.
Wow. Gosh, that's frustrating. That's just frustrating even just to hear. But how long did you guys search for? I mean, how long did you guys put together search parties and stuff like that?
We didn't, when we tried to do the search party, we were told no because it was going to be on the Yakima reservation. And at that time, again, we were told that we could disturb any crime scene or evidence that. And I'm like, well, can you go check, or can you guys go search and just let my cousin go?
Mm-hmm.
And my cousin Roxanne was like, it's still a no.
Gosh.
And I'm like, why? And she's like, I don't know, but they can't tell us we can't take the sidewalks. And I'm like, but that's not looking for my sister. She's like, I know, it's just, Sissy, I'm not enrolled here. You're not enrolled here. That's what it's all coming down to, that you're a descendant.
Mm.
And I was like, I go, and I'm like, my mom was Yakima. Like, I'm only Umatilla because that's where my mom enrolled us.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I can be Yakima. I am Yakima. I have Yakima blood. I go, so it was frustrating to deal with at that time, to where I was like, fine, forget it. We'll just do it in the city limits then.
That's actually a really interesting point to make. It's not something that the non-tribal people really have an understanding of. That, I mean, outside of these cases being a jurisdictional issue, I mean, you also have a tribal enrollment issue, which there's not a lot of people outside of the indigenous community that understand that whole, you're not enrolled here, so you're not from here, you're not considered to be from here. And that's
Yeah.
that's actually a really interesting point to make, that it really is, it runs like that. It's a blood quantum system, for those of you listening, that
Mm-hmm.
this is something that we as indigenous people, you can grow up in the area, you can grow up on a tribe, but still not be considered part of that tribe. You can be part of the community, but not part of the tribe, and that means that weighs a lot.
It does, and to have that, I don't know, like I told my cousin, I am indigenous by my mom. I carry my mom with me every day because I have her blood. I go, but it's the descendant part. Like, why do I have to say I'm a descendant? Why do I have to address that part? I'm still indigenous. I'm still Native American. And my blood in that enrollment card's not going to tell you, it's going to tell you my information, but that's not who I am. I still carry the blood.
Right.
So I don't need that enrollment card status.
Right. It is. It's extremely frustrating, and I really am sorry that you had to go through that part of that.
Yeah, and and the part is that me and my family got through it, and we hope that to amplify and empower other families that don't live on their reservation or that aren't enrolled there, that it doesn't matter, you're still indigenous. That's how I see it. And like I tell my son, I'm there for my family, like my mom told me, and always to be there for our people, not pick and choose. I go, and now I kind of know what my mom was talking about when she would, like, that's my sister, that's my brother,
Mm-hmm.
that's my cousin, those are my nieces.
It's interesting because it's something that I'm married to a non-tribal, and so that sounds really close to what we call Indian way.
Yeah,
They say Indian way, that's that it's really hard to explain to people that aren't tribal or from
yeah,
that sort of upbringing that that's so and so, that they mean this to me. So I get that.
yeah. So it was hard in the beginning, but now today, I do see more. I hope that tribal police take more, classes or learn more, educate themselves more about the drone epidemic, even the violence native on native, and
Mm-hmm.
because that is a big issue on reservations as well. So I hope that a change comes to all reservations to where we can feel comfortable as, going to our tribal officers and to report something without being treated like how we were. She was just out partying, or she's out there somewhere partying and probably drugging, is what I was told.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, and given the fact that he read, oh, okay, I know who that is. So, like pretty much like through a couple of her incidents, on tribal, like she was in jail for that. I know which one you're talking about. And it's like, I didn't come here for my sister's background check.
Mm-hmm.
And I already know that part. I'm her sister.
Yeah.
I know the wrongs she's done.
That happens a lot, though. It's really tough because when you research these cases, that's something that you come across a lot, is the fact that they look at something like that, your past history. I mean, but we all have a past, and I don't think that should really be it should be an indication as to where to look first, as opposed to it being a reason not to look.
Yes. And so around that time still, it was hard just doing a prayer walk, and a vigil for my sister when she went missing. And what I did every day, I remember, the months, like, because it was getting cold, like, my sister's somewhere, she's out there,
Mm-hmm.
it's, winter's hitting, we need to look for her. And, and then when we told the FBI, like I had to call 'em, like, please, can you please look in this area, which was less than about 3 miles from my home
Mm-hmm.
on Highway 97. I had, individuals come by my home like, hey, I got word that the freezer is in this area that you need to go look in that area. Like, and I'm like, hmm. And I did go look in that area, but I didn't find anything.
Mm-hmm.
And the FBI went out and searched behind the tow yard that's there on 97.
Mm-hmm.
And if they would have went, which I think it's the Yakima Nation property owners, they didn't cross that line because it wasn't property they were going to do the grid search, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So they didn't go past that line. If they would have found the freezer, but they didn't find anything that February of 2019.
From everything that I've read, nothing was found until the 4th of July of 2019.
Yes, which those 275 days, I posted so much. And then I just started posting on Thursdays because started flooding Facebook. And so I just picked, I remember somebody posting something. It was like a memorial for their loved one. And it said like Red Thursday. And I was like, oh, that caught my attention. So I started using the same hashtag and just started hashtagging MMIW, no more stolen sisters. And I would share photos from events that we did for Rosenda in the community. And I just started posting on Thursdays, like,
Mm-hmm.
has anybody seen my sister? And just pictures of her. Does anybody know where she's at? Please, you can call me. You can reach out to the phone numbers, which was tribal police department and the FBI. I actually raised in that 275 days, we raised money for flyers and everything. And we also raised $1,000 for information leading to Rosenda's whereabouts. And when July 4th comes around, I'm actually at work. I just happened to walk into a room that I was inspecting and the news is on. So I just left it and I'm just checking under the beds and stuff. And all I hear is human remains found in a freezer. And
Mm-hmm.
I remember that day because I was at work and I knew in my heart, just hearing that, I immediately told my manager, like, I gotta go. And driving, it was just a little bit after 4:30. And I'm like, calling the FBI, I'm like, that's my sister, right? Because I told you the rumors that were going around. And she's like, I know, sissy, but I'm not in town right now. So I can't talk to you till I get back and I'm actually out of the state. And I was like, well, she's like, I'm on my way. I just got news also, so I'm leaving the conference and I'm coming back. And once I touch down, I'll get in contact with you. And I called my brother and I told him, like, did you see the news? He's like, no. Why?
Mm-hmm.
And I told him, I think they found Rosenda. He's like, why are you saying it? He's like, you don't know if that's her. I go, I just have a feeling it's her, bro. I go, because all these rumors that went around, and now they find human remains in a freezer.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm like, there was truth to it then, bro. I go, that's why I listened to everybody that was telling me things. I wasn't believing them. I just wanted to know what wanted to tell me.
Right. You want to hope for the best in these kind of, scenarios and stuff like that, especially when it involves, your loved one that way.
Yeah. I go and then I get home and the agent calls and says, did Rosenda have any dental records updated? Do you know of? And I said, yes, she just had some dental work done like 4 or 5 months ago. And she asked where. And she's like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
this will be like a faster way for us identifying the remains. So we don't know if it's her, but if you could go sign a release for your sister just in case. And I said, yeah, I can do that. And July 12th comes around and she calls, or I have her saved in my phone. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, okay, my husband just left because my brother-in-law was in the hospital at the time. So it's just me, my niece, Carmen, and I answer the phone and we're getting ready. And I'm like, hello. And she's like, hey, sissy, um, are you home? And I said, yeah. She's like, okay, are you alone? And I was like, no. Is someone home with you? And I was like, yeah, someone's home with me. Why? And she's like, and I just asked her, I go, was it my sister? The only thing she could say was yes. And I remember my door was locked because I was changing. And I just remember falling to the ground and asking why. And she stayed on the phone with me. And I didn't hear myself,
Mm-hmm.
but my niece busted down the door because she's like, I've never heard you scream like that. She's like, finds me on the floor. She's like, what, auntie? And I go, I was having an anxiety attack. And I calmed down and she was just holding me. She's like, it was my mom, huh? And I go, I couldn't talk. I didn't know like you could feel such pain and sorrow all at the same time until that day, which was July 12th. And it was actually the same day I lost my brother-in-law.
Oh, wow.
Um, and he actually lived with us since I've been with my husband, and that's been over 20 years. So I took two losses that day, and my sister's was the most devastating and broken time of my life and my family's. But I couldn't let it slip away burying myself with alcohol
Right, right. That's,
or just give up because that happened.
yeah, I get that.
That was something that was, it could have been right in front of me, or I could have just started drinking, and I found another source to
Mm-hmm.
deal with my emotions, or so I didn't fall into alcohol or maybe drugs. I chose to carry my sister and her story and to fight for her justice. And not only that, this shouldn't have happened to her.
I agree. I think that your sister's case is really wrongful and too soon, and I believe undeserving.
Yeah. And it's just, it has, and because I don't do a lot of podcasts or anything, but I always speak from my experience and from my heart, especially about my sister, just because
Mm-hmm.
everything that I feel like I need people to feel it and to know that this is real. Her murder was real, what happened to her and what's happening like to other women that are going missing and even the men that are going missing. It's just heartbreaking, and I'm just glad that I found a way to help other families to use their voice for their loved one.
Yeah, because it was when I started this show, I had the same exact thought of that there's a story to be told here, and that I, as a podcaster, as a reporter, telling these stories is one thing for me to tell you the facts of everything, and even the facts themselves are very heartbreaking, but to hear it firsthand, it gives a lot more dimensions for my listeners to really digest the severity and the reality, like you said, the reality of this heartbreak, this tragedy. And I really do appreciate you coming on and telling Rosenda's story. As tough and heartbreaking as it is, it really does help put it in perspective for a lot of people that don't see it or can't imagine being in that. So, but I really do. I appreciate that.
Thank you. And I appreciate you for waiting and having patience with me for me to come on your podcast.
Yeah, I've had a lot of life happen to me over the past 6 7 months, so I get it.
Yeah, so I was like, yeah, I'm gonna do. I told my husband I'm doing it this time because he's been waiting, and so I just like to do, or I try to go on. I like to go on native, all native podcasts,
Hmm.
just because that's where I think where I can relate to other families or empower them, or even if they would need assistance in any way to help with a vigil, a prayer walk.
Hmm.
Like, that's, I mean, you want to know how to do one, or even just have, have me go and help you do a walk. That's why I do it. And because no family should have to be in this position that we're in at all, like especially with the numbers that it just keeps rising, and it's like more families, more missing men, more kids, or more women. And I hope the new task force that was created helps.
Yeah, I was able to. I caught the article. Another friend of mine up from the area. I know that she's from the Kent, Washington area. Tina. Oh gosh, Tina. Tina. She's Alyssa McLemore's aunt.
Yeah, Tina Michelle.
Michelle. Yeah.
Or yeah, yes.
Yeah.
Okay. I was like, back Tina Michelle. Yeah. I just went to her event on April 9th.
Oh
I
wow.
traveled over there to support her because um how I met Tina, her family actually invited my family over when Rosenda first went missing, and they were doing a special on Alyssa McLemore,
Mm-hmm.
and CNN was going to be there. So she shared space with me and was like, come over here. Roxanne introduced us, I believe. And she's like, I can ask. And she's like, no, tell her to come over. She can share space. And that's how my sister ended up on CNN, was because of the McLemore family. I'm so grateful for them. Yeah.
I love those guys so much. They've been a big support for me too. So, well, again, I want to say thank you for coming on and telling your story.
Mhm.
My listeners, we're hoping for justice, and hopefully that comes sooner rather than later.
Yes. And even if there is a future update, I usually post a lot on my personal page.
Hmm.
So if you wanted to keep up, you'd probably have to request my personal page. I post because I'd like to keep it personal. So
Right.
I do everything from my page, but I also have the Help Us Find Rosenda page, and I am part of Roxanne's. She's the director and founder of Missing and Murdered Indigenous People and Families, and that's who I work under. She helps me a lot also with vigils that I need to do around my area. So they're all good people. I really love the people over in Kent and Seattle area.
Like I said, my listeners and I will definitely keep an ear out, and any sort of information that's brought out news wise and stuff like that, we'll definitely keep an eyeball. And if there is an announcement, I probably will touch base with you then too as well. So
Okay.
yeah, thank you again, and
Yep.
I hope that you guys have nothing but good blessings, and the Creator watches over you and your family.
Yep. Same with you. Thank you for having me.
And that's going to do it for this special MMIW awareness episode for today. Again, I want to say thank you to Sissy and the Strong family for coming onto the show and sharing the stories and giving us that account. Our hearts here at One Missing, One Murdered go out to you and all of your loved ones as well. And that's all the time that we got today. I want to thank you guys all again for coming in and checking out this brand new episode, this bonus episode, if you will. Sorry about that. And I'd like to end the episode with a quote by an Ojibwe elder, Art Solomon. "The woman is the foundation on which nations are built. She is the heart of her nation. If that heart is weak, the people are weak. If her heart is strong and her mind is clear, then the nation is strong and knows its purpose. The woman is the center of everything." Thank you all again. May you all stay safe and stay blessed out there. From One Missing, One Murdered, I've been Jordan, Lone Bear. Have a good one, guys. All research and editing, as well as voice work, is done by me, Jordan Lone Bear. Music provided to us by Rainisa Ridley. One Missing, One Murdered, all Indigenous, is a Lone Bear Productions.